How about now? Is that any better? Sometimes the volume on this thing gets a little glitchy. All right. Thank you, buddy. What I'm saying is, right now, it's the beginning of our vegetable garden season here in Florida. For the last few weeks, many gardeners have been planting, and in South Florida, they start planting now to within the next couple of weeks. We're supposed to really be putting in the effort right now, where we're putting in our warm season vegetables such as tomatoes, cucumbers, things along those nature. Hi, Q. Well, we're not really going to be doing that. Uh, I'm glad I held off. I held off for other reasons. I'm still trying to get the place kind of cleaned up from the massive overgrowth from the summer, and I don't really have a good running lawnmower, so it's taking me a little longer. However, we now have a hurricane bearing down on us. Was going to start planting Wednesday or Thursday of this week, and that is when they have it scheduled for a hurricane to be blowing right over me. Now, it could swing in a couple different directions at this point. Anybody who's ever tracked a hurricane knows how that works, but you never really know for sure. It could end up going up to the panhandle or it could go right up the middle of the state. I personally have a feeling this one's going to pull Hurricane Charlie. It's going to enter somewhere south of Tampa and it's going to exit somewhere around Daytona. But that's just my personal feeling from experience. We'll see exactly how it goes in the next few days. So this week, I will be basically hiding lots of my plants in the woods. That's going to be a lot of fun. And breaking down my planting table, which is fortunately able to be broke down, and I'm going to store it away. And walking around looking for anything that might be picked up in a class 1 hurricane, which is about what I'm expecting the winds to be like through here. Generally speaking, that's not that bad. It, Charlie, on the other hand, was actually pretty bad. It's one of the few in my lifetime that hurricane force winds actually went through Orlando, and it went through Orlando well over 100 miles an hour, and there was down trees everywhere. I'm expecting something similar this time. The exact trajectory, it's always subject to what it decides to do. The spaghetti maps are always fun to look at, and that's really all they are, is fun to look at. If you're even close to being in the zone, you should probably prep in advance. Fortunately for me, and unfortunate for a lot of other people, it will be coming in on the west side of the state. I'm really hoping that those people are taking it seriously. Yeah, and Charlie threw a lot of tornadoes, Q, a lot. I really hope the people on the west side of the state are taking this seriously. Anybody that is even remotely close to coastal needs to move inland. Um, 20-foot storm surge plus. It's no joke when you live in an area that average height above sea level is 5 foot. So that's definitely something they need to really be considering, is just leaving that the west coast and getting further inland. Um, those that are going to stay need to really stock up on water. Be prepared to have your power out for a week. Have alternative cooking methods. Doesn't matter what your alternative cooking method is, just make sure that it's safe. Carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide can be a real issue. Hi, JH556. Have nice to see ya. Yeah, they are putting out evacuations now, and I really would urge people to take that seriously, especially if you're in a low-lying area or in a mobile home or even an older wood frame home. I've been through more storms than I can count. Basically, how it works for me is as soon as they say class 2, I leave. Now, those that are built on higher ground, in a concrete block home, they're usually going to be fine in a class 2. If you say class 3, those concrete block homes are also now in major danger. So they're predicting it coming in as a 2 or a 3, the last I heard. South of Tampa, probably the Sarasota area. I have family there. I'm hoping that they're leaving right now. If they happen to watch this, leave, go to Orlando. It's not going to be fun in the next couple days. Don't wander around in the floodwaters. Down wires are a serious hazard. If you happen to have a John boat or something along those lines, prepare it in case you need to go into areas and help with rescue operations. This is something that a lot of us in Florida do. I have a canoe myself, and when I lived in a mobile home park after one, I had to go check on several of the elderly people that were unable to leave. And the best way I had to do that was to take my canoe because there were 5 feet of water in the roads in that mobile home park, and the water had risen a foot to 2 feet, depending on where they were in that mobile home park, into the actual mobile homes, which were on raised lots. If anybody's lived in a mobile home park in Florida, you'll know that most of them don't have raised lots. They just clear a field, put in some roads, and let you start parking in there. By parking, I mean you put your mobile home in there and it pretty much stays forever unless a hurricane comes by and knocks it down. So, things you need to be doing outside of your immediate yard and thing. Well, let me rephrase that. Things you need to be doing in your yard right now is securing anything that the wind might be able to pick up. Pots, gardeners, we always have pots everywhere. Loose trash, basic debris. Clean your yard very, very well. Don't worry about mowing your yard right now. I don't know how many people I see out there running around right now trying to mow their grass before the storm. That's the last thing you need to worry about. If you're near the water at all or you're on the West Coast, you need to be boarding up. Everybody along the West Coast needs to be putting up their shutters yesterday or today. You need at least 5 gallons of water per person, because you need a gallon of water per person per day. The power goes out, you lose our air conditioning. That water is about the only thing that's going to keep you hydrated. A lot of people talk about how hot it gets after a hurricane. It's very, very hot. We're a little later in the year, but you're still going to be looking at probably the low 90s in much of Florida. No power for a week, no air conditioning. Everything in your refrigerator is going to go bad. If you have a generator, prep it before the storm and make sure everything's okay, and then put it in a place that's dry. Do not run it inside the home, inside the garage, or even under the eaves. You need to have it at least 20 feet away from the home. Make sure that the carbon dioxide and the carbon monoxide does not get into the house. because it'll come right through the vents in the eaves, up into the attic, collect, and seep downward into the home. I've seen multiple times where people have done exactly that. They put it up underneath the eaves so it's not getting hit by the rain. And they power their house, and then the family doesn't wake up. They make it through the storm, and then something silly like that takes it out. So make sure you have it away from the home, as far away from the home as you can get it feasibly, and maybe have it protected in some manner from the wind. But until the storm passes, it's best just to leave that in a dry storage area so that it'll work after the storm passes. And then you can fire it up and run your extension cords. But still keep it away from the home. Don't put it in your garage. So many people want to put it in their garage. You can store it there, but don't run it in there. Batteries right now, if you can get them. Canned goods, if you can get them. If you've got a bunch of starts like I do, bring them inside. I've got a bunch of tomato starts. It's really the only thing I'm planting this fall is tomatoes and maybe some potatoes in a couple of weeks. Hello, Aquarius. Good to see you. Right now, well, tomorrow is basically your last day to prepare if you are in Florida for the oncoming path of this hurricane. Don't take it as a joke. I know so many people in my lifetime that went, yay, hurricane party. It's great. Spent all their money on booze, no food, no water, no batteries, no basic supplies. Come day 2, after all the power went out, they're roaming the neighborhood in a dangerous area, trying to get people to give them food and water. They usually end up getting some, but you really shouldn't rely on your neighbors for that. I've seen that a lot. Now, after Charlie, the U.S. Army came through, the reservists, and they were handing out canned water. Water had been canned by Anheuser-Busch. Somewhere in my stuff, I have one of those cans of water. I kept it as a memento. It's really cool. But don't spend your money on booze. If you're going to buy some booze, buy a high alcohol content booze, not for drinking, but for emergency sterilization of water or wounds, such as a high-proof rum. Hi, Alan. Good seeing you. Now, other things you need to be doing, or you can be doing, at least on your property, dealing with this upcoming storm, is if you have small, very young fruit trees, now would be a good time to go out there and put stakes on them. If you have any trees that are a little questionable and might fall over, stake them up. Maybe take a half an hour or so. You can use a 1x2 to do this. It doesn't take very long. 1x2 and a little bit of rope and a rubber mallet. If you're driving it in and you hit an area that's really, really hard and it feels wrong, don't keep driving it. You might be hitting the root system, so move it over a little. Garden tools such as rakes and hose, things like that, axes, adzes. I have a rather nice adze I use in the garden all the time. Best digging tool I have. Should be put somewhere where it's not likely to be picked up. I will actually be doing a lot of that tomorrow. Most of it I have centralized, so it shouldn't take me very long. And all I really have left to do in that area is cruise through my carport and pick up some gutter supplies that are laying there and move them further underneath Pick up a couple pole saws I have sitting there and secure those. I've got to do something with my potting table and all the plants I have around the potting table. And I have a wire rack that I think I'm going to tie in place so it doesn't go anywhere. And I gotta store my trash cans, which reminds me I've got to put those out. So, normally speaking, this time of year, it's all about getting as many of your warm season vegetables in the ground. Like I said, that started 2 weeks ago for Central Florida. I'm on the southeast side of Central Florida. So I generally pull that by a week to 2 weeks, which would put me planting them Wednesday or Thursday. I won't be doing that this Wednesday and Thursday. If the weather is good, I'll be doing that Saturday or Sunday. So it's just one of them things where if you don't already have them in the ground, don't put them in the ground. Bring them in, put them in the garage if you have a garage, something along those lines. I myself will be probably putting them in the kitchen for the duration of the storm and then putting them back outside after setting up my tables again. Hopefully, we won't get much here. They continuously move the funnel back and forth, so I've got to watch it carefully while I'm watching for this incoming storm, doing various preps. Now, I'm not going to board up this time because I don't think I'm going to have anything along those lines, but that's because I'm on the east coast of Florida. If I was on the west coast of Florida, I would be boarding it up really fast. I'd probably already have it boarded up, have everything packed up, have the truck packed up in case we needed to leave, and be watching to see whether or not we needed to leave. It can shift fast. Just like Jay just said, it can shift real fast. So right now, I'm on hurricane watch. Anybody else who happens to be in Florida, hey, Gil at Camp Patton, you need to really, really pay attention to what they're saying. Don't act like it's a joke. I know we have a lot of transplants from up north, and us native Floridians tend to be like, it's just a hurricane. Just a hurricane. Depending on how that hurricane runs, how the straight line winds run, how many tornadoes it throws, how much water it's pushing in front of it, how much water it dumps on you as it goes over, those factors can all affect exactly what's going on. Gil, would you care to come up? You have experience with this type of stuff. Well, I would urge you to make ready immediately. If you don't already have basic supplies, many of us native Floridians keep certain basic supplies. Get them now. And like you said, generally speaking, most native Floridians have some type of bin or multiple bins that they keep basic supplies in. Water, batteries, rice, beans, canned goods, basic medical supplies. Just in case. Basic medicines. If you're on a medicine such as insulin or something like that, you need to be able to keep your insulin cool. You cannot rely on there being adequate ice, as of tomorrow, it will be gone. Since you still have power, you need to go into mass production of ice. Block ice lasts the longest. The bigger the chunk of ice, the better. Also, something a lot of people don't consider is freezing your water bottles. Doesn't matter if it's this type of water bottle or a gallon jug. Freeze it. You can drink the water after it defrosts, but that ice can keep your medicines and your other foods fresh and usable for up to a week. I have old ice cream containers contained, I believe, a solid gallon of ice cream. Some of them are round, some of them are square. I will put those in and start freezing 2 to 3 days before I think a storm might be in the area. As soon as I know one is completely frozen, I will pop it right out. Oh, and Gil, happy birthday. I believe, not Charlie, but the one after Charlie, I had about 20 blocks of ice. And we did evacuate and go into Orlando because of that one, because it was going to go right over Melbourne. And it ended up entering just south of Melbourne uh, in Indian River. Hi, Hapsters. Hapsters know a little bit about hurricanes being out there in Hawaii. So freeze as much ice as you can get. You can always drink the water later. You might end up, if you do too good a job, you might have to pull stuff out, pull water bottles out to allow it to defrost some. Another good trick that is useful, especially if you have city water, good quality water, clean your bathtub now, get a good rinse, fill that completely up full of water, keep a small bucket in there. Yeah, there you go. Gil says turn everything down in your freezer and refrigerator to the lowest setting. Once the power goes out, you don't open it unless you absolutely have to. Those big blocks of ice I was talking about, if they happen to still be in the container, you can set a few of those in your refrigerator to help keep it cold longer. Or move to a smaller container such as a cooler. I have two coolers that I pull specifically for this situation. They're sitting right outside my kitchen door right now, where I can just pull them in. Hapsters, I'm on the opposite coast of where they're predicting it to come in, but they're actually predicting it to come in due west of me by about, I'd say it's about 120 miles, 130 miles straight across. So it's not too bad, but I am most likely going to have hurricane force winds as it goes through this area. Other things that you can do uh, when the power goes out, you're going to need an alternative way of cooking. If you happen to have gas, that's great. Uh, Generally speaking, I have a camp stove that I keep specifically for these purposes, and I also have a grill. I've cooked many, many meals after a hurricane on wood. Try to go and get charcoal right now. Most of the stores are already out because everybody else already picked it up. Usually speaking, you will see bundles of a hard wood right next to where they had that, or big chunks of hardwood. As long as it's a good hardwood, you should be fine. Hapsters are predicting it coming in just south of Tampa, in the Sarasota area. Last I checked, but you know how that can change. So prepare now. Anything you can do. There's going to be a lot of down limbs. Do not wander in the water. Do not drink the flood water. I live in an area that happens to have a lot of septic tanks. If this area floods, all that septic is going to come right out of the top of the septic tanks and contaminate that water. And when it goes down, it'll go down, and the water will go out in the canals and go right out into the St. Johns River, which also happens to be the main water source for the city of Melbourne. Fortunately, it will be cleaned before pumped. If the whole city loses power, we often lose water. Lose water because the power went out and they can't run the pumps. Hi, Dagon Hills. Now, some of the other problems you might encounter is a lack of fuel. They bring it in as fast as they can for things like this. But the main way that fuel comes into Central Florida is Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is going to get hit. Might not get a direct hit, but it is going to get hit. That's where 90% of the fuel in the state of Florida comes in, is through Tampa Bay, where it then goes into a pipeline and is piped to various different parts. They have one line that goes over to Orlando, and then they have another line that goes, where does that one go? Up by the University of Florida at the moment, not Gainesville. After that, everything is pretty much shipped around. So if that happens, the next available port that they'll be able to send it to will be the Port of Miami. Or they have to go all the way around and go to Port Canaveral or Port Jacksonville. So keep in mind that they're definitely getting hit in Tampa, and that's where all the fuel is. So fill your tank up as much as you can afford or that you can. If you think you're going to have to go somewhere else, fill up a couple 5-gallon tanks that you can keep in the truck or in your car. Something along those lines. I've got my truck as filled up as I can get it. I've got enough gas to get out of Dodge if I need to. Yeah, perhaps I believe I saw that. Hey, Swampy. Let's see if I can do this. No, I don't want to do that. I don't know how to add mod from this platform. Oh, there's the next 48 hours after the storm hits is the most crucial for survival. 48 hours before the storm hits is most crucial for getting prepared. Bear in mind, when they're talking about it hitting, that's when the eye wall actually hits land, not the effects it has before it. Many, many times before the storm even gets close, you're already being hit by the storm. So when they're saying we're going to be hit on Thursday, that means Wednesday I'm going to have very bad weather. I expect on and off bad weather tomorrow. If you're on the West Coast, get anything you can done tomorrow, because Wednesday there's a good chance it's going to be pouring. The winds are going to be kicking up. Trying to put up plywood in tropical storm weather is not fun when the wind picks it up and slams it through your window. It's not fun at all. Been there. have several clients that usually have me come and put up their shutters. I've been there while a storm is incoming where the winds have picked up, and I've seen other people in the area that didn't, first timers or other instances where they're losing control of a big sheet of plywood. I watched one gentleman put a piece of plywood right through the side window of his house, turn right back around with the same sheet of plywood, having not gotten it up yet, lost control of it again, and it smashed the side window of his truck. So that's not a lot of fun. Put them up as soon as you possibly can. If you can't get plywood because there's runs on it, use whatever you can. Well, some sheet steel is a whole lot better than nothing at all. So go over to that part of the section, get some sheet steel, get some 1x4, and you can put 1x4 backers on the back of it to make it more solid. Put up the sheet steel. 1x4 backers should not be wider than the window, should fit in the frame inside with the sheet steel on the outside, creating a buffer zone that if it gets hit by something, it's more likely to bounce off. Or if it lodges in, it's got that little bit of space to make the difference to whether or not it shatters your window. It's not as good as a hurricane shutter. It's not as good as 3/4 inch plywood. A lot of people put up 5/8 or 1/2 inch. Really want to go with the 3/4 if you can get it. If you've taken all the time to cut all that 3/4 at the end of the storm, don't throw it away. Everybody throws it away. I've built so many things out of discarded plywood. I've actually got a stack of discarded plywood from the last hurricane already out there. People throw it away. You've already cut it. Take a Sharpie, label what window it went on and which way is up, and then store it away. Keep the screws in a bag, and you're good to go next time. And then, if everybody did this, we wouldn't have a rush on the wood like we do every single time. Yeah, I don't mess with plywood once it gets up. And I've been in construction in Florida for a very long time. I have a lot of clients that will have me run around and clean their gutters and things along those lines before storms. I'm not hearing from any of them before this storm, which is really, really weird. I'm not really sure why that is. But, a lot of them are snowbirds, and they usually call me and say, hey, you think you can go over and put up the shutters? Do you think you can clean out the gutters before the storm comes in? And I'll run around like crazy, man, getting that done, plus getting my own stuff. I haven't heard from many of them. Matter of fact, a lot of them I haven't heard from since COVID, which is kind of weird. I figured once we had a hurricane, I'd hear from them. The only clients I'm hearing from are the ones that want me to trim their hedges or maybe put in some plants in a couple of weeks, things like that. Kind of weird, but it is what it is. Thanks, Hapsters. I greatly appreciate it. I want to see if this feature works. Bear with me here. I've never done this. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, you can definitely save the plywood and use it for another hurricane. I highly recommend set it up. If you can seal it, you know, right now might not be the best time to be sealing it, but after the storm, let it dry off. Go ahead and seal it. Stack it in a way where it really won't bend, somewhere flat. With the 3/4, you don't have to worry about that as much as far as the bending goes. And this will not let me copy and paste. All right, I'll stop messing with that. I'll have to have somebody show me exactly how that works because it ain't working for me. So hopefully we won't have a repeat of Charlie or Andrew or any number of other hurricanes that have been bad. And hopefully the people that are on the West Coast are taking this seriously. If you are anywhere from the Panhandle all the way down to Fort Myers, you need to be getting your stuff together and getting out if you can. They can rebuild a house. They can't necessarily rebuild you. So get yourself together. Leave tomorrow. Get your house as protected as you can. If you're in a coastal area or a mobile home, I recommend that more. But since we do not, good night, Hapsters. Since we have absolutely no idea where it's going to come short, and that's the basics of how that works. You really never know exactly how these are going to come in. I could wake up tomorrow morning and it could be bearing down basically out on Thousand Islands and decide to come up that way. I've seen them do that. As a matter of fact, the last hurricane that actually came through this area went literally right up the center of the state, not across it, right up the center. There was absolutely nowhere anybody. All right, Gil. Absolutely nowhere anybody could go in the state of Florida. In fact, I know a lot of people that completely left the state, went to southern Alabama and Georgia, and they still got hit by it. Hi, Sherry. Good night, Alan. Thank you very much for coming. I greatly appreciate it. Just be safe. If you're getting ready to do your vegetable gardens, bring them in, bring your starts inside, and just wait. You're going to have a lot of cleanup to do. You can plant them in a few days. Versus, I know quite a few people that were rushing to plant their vegetable gardens today before the storm comes. It's probably not the best idea, and they're most likely going to lose what they planted because the wind might beat them to death, or the whole area might get flooded. Unfortunately, JH, uh, hurricanes are perfectly normal here. It's actually been abnormal that we haven't been hit by one in 4 years in this area, even slightly. We've had a couple tropical storms. I've been on hurricane watch a few times where I'm going, and then it goes past us and hits Louisiana. This one, I don't think it's going to go past us and hit Louisiana. I think this one has a very, very good chance of cruising right through Central Florida. which is actually the least likely area in Florida to get hit, it tends to only happen maybe once a decade. Basically, if you're in Orlando, usually you only have a direct impact from a hurricane once every 20 to 25 years. Well, coming up on that 20-year mark. It's real close. Charlie was the last one that went through the Orlando metro. There's a good possibility this one is going to go through the Orlando metro. Depends on how its curve is. There's a good possibility it could come through here. Now, I'm in South Brevard County, so I'm almost out of their zone of probability. But there are at least two spaghetti strings on that map that put it going right over this location. Now, something I've learned over the years when you're looking at those spaghetti string maps is the ones that are it's most likely to follow is the US map and the Euro. And the Euro tends to be slightly more accurate most of the time, but not always. Now, those of you that don't live in this area, now might be a good time to watch how the responses are here. Many people, when they retire, move here. Then this happens and they have no idea what to do. Those are the people we find at the grocery store, completely panicking, buying the stupidest of things. Sometimes we find them in the weirdest of places after a storm. A few years back, one of the storms, we had a group of British tourists that were supposed to be at Disney, which is one of the safest places on this peninsula to be. Disney has serious underground buildings that they can evacuate a lot of people to. These people decided to leave Disney in their luxury hotel and go wandering around the swamps of the St. Johns River right before a storm. Now, fortunately, FWC found them, but they weren't in the best of condition. They found them way out in a wildlife management area at one of the shelters. We have various shelters out there, but most of those shelters, when they say shelter, it's basically shelter from the sun and the rain, not the wind, because it doesn't have walls. Those people rode out a hurricane essentially under an awning in the middle of a swamp that was filling up full of water. Could you imagine being out in the middle of the swamp that's filling up full of water with 100-mile-an-hour winds, holding on to a pole, trying not to blow away? So, after every storm, we find all kinds of stuff like that. Sometimes we don't find them until well after the storm and it's too late. So, don't do that. That was one of those nightmare scenarios where they did not realize what a hurricane really was. They weren't listening to the people at Disney. They were going to go out and have their vacation. You'll also get a lot of people that are going to run to the beach right now so they can see the surf. See, even though Florida's completely surrounded by water, generally speaking, we don't have much of a surf. A 5 to 6 foot surf is a major ordeal. So every surfer in this state is waxing their board right now because it's the only time we get 10 to 12 foot waves. In my younger days, I've surfed a few hurricanes. Probably not the smartest thing I ever did. Right now, there are plenty of people that are getting ready to do that, and there's going to be plenty of people that are going to want to go out. A big problem that we also have is people wanting to go cruise during and after the storm. Now, generally speaking, you don't think of a wake and think of a car, you think of wake and you think of a boat. That's not very funny when you've got a whole bunch of people in cars driving by on semi-flooded roads sending wake up through your house. We had one of our weathermen almost have a nervous breakdown on air telling people to stop doing that. Good night, JH. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Thank you. I probably won't be on too much longer. This thing's got a timer on it somewhere. Yeah, I got about 10 more minutes. But no, Swampy, you need to call them, tell them to get out. Fort Myers is on the hit list. Seriously, they need to leave. All's good, Q. I have 4 kids. I know exactly what that's like. Oh, don't go driving around. Don't go tromping through. Check on your neighbors. Make sure they're okay. Now, many of us native Floridians, we know how to handle running out, dealing with things during the eye of the storm, and getting back in. If you've never done that and you're new to this situation, stay inside. Because the weather can turn very fast. There are definite signs that that's about to happen. But if you've never been through it, don't chance on thinking that you're going to recognize the signs, and all of a sudden you're in the eye wall of a hurricane with 100-mile-an-hour winds, and it was lightly breezy a couple of minutes ago. Stay inside until you get an all clear. And then when you get an all clear, make sure you're wearing good shoes when you go outside. Stay out of the water. We get people that are electrocuted every single time. Now, they just did some major work in this neighborhood, and they took all the power lines that were running on poles at the back of everybody's property, and they put them underground. This may or may not be a good thing. We might not lose power due to the winds like we did in the last storm, and the storm before that, and the storm before that. But now all of those lines have a very large potential of being underwater. So if they do have a problem, and water will penetrate anything that's not completely sealed, there's a possibility of them electrifying this entire neighborhood. One of the reasons why, generally speaking, most of Florida has their power lines on poles, because they don't want people to be electrified. At least when they're above ground, you can see that the power line fell down. If they're below ground, you can't see any of that. So I'm not really sure how that's going to work. I watched them tear up my front yard and everybody else's front yard while they were putting it in. Basically, it's a section of line that goes 2 lots, and then it's another section of line that goes 2 lots, and so on and so forth. So that's a lot of splicing and a lot of places for water to get into. It also means the whole neighborhood could still lose power. They can't exactly run around and throw the breakers like they used to either, since, well, now there's a bunch of boxes, most of which they tried not to put in occupied lots, so they're in empty lots that are severely overgrown. And most of those haven't been built up, which means they're going to be underwater. So, kind of not sure how that's going to work. It's going to be the first time I've ever been in a home where the power is underground in Florida. So, great deal of fun there. But another thing you tend to see a lot of is people playing in their boats in a flooded neighborhood, or taking their raised truck and driving around, pulling people on surfboards, inner tubes, things along those lines. Don't do that. The water is going to have all kinds of things in it, anywhere from fish and alligators to septic, might be electrified. So don't do that. That could be a real issue. Just wait until the water recedes. Keep your family safe, keep yourself safe. Have your vehicle ready and, if possible, pointed in the direction needed for you to go if you need to leave because the storm's gotten that bad. If your house starts to go, get in your vehicle's safer. But don't go driving around in the neighborhoods. If you got to do something like that, you drive very slow. You stay out of any water that you can. Get to an underpass and park under the underpass. That's basically the best thing you can do. I've known a few people to ride out hurricanes in their car under an underpass because their mobile home blew away and they were in it at the time and they were able to get out. A lot of people aren't that fortunate. Be safe. Hey, y'all. Thanks very much for coming, and I'll be doing this again next week. I've got to start doing this on a regular basis. Thank you very much, everyone. I greatly appreciate it. And have a good night.